missing someone. Love with all your heart. Missing someone. Love with heart.
What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. Today in this week's episode I'm going to show you how I relightened my client. She's got some grown out highlights and we are going to do some color blocking, which is some high contrast color. And so she's wanting to do more of a blonde all over on the top, and then everything on the underneath we are going to do like pretty much a chunk of black color underneath. But you can see her previous color was kind of like a purpley tone, and you can see it's kind of faded out a little like peachy. It's a little warm in some areas and pink in some areas, so we're gonna lighten that up as well as like highlight her roots. So since I'm going to be coloring the underneath black, I'm going to be using the liquid demis, and I'm using 3-0 and mixing that with the liquid demi developer. And I opted to use a liquid demi because I wanted it to be like a semi-permanent. I didn't want to put permanent color just in case she decides to go lighter again and we have to highlight it. It just makes my job a lot easier, but this will definitely fade as she washes it. And she did express to me that we're just trying out this color. She wanted something different, so that is also why I didn't do a permanent color. So I'm going in and I have already sectioned out the pieces that I'm going to be applying basically the black color, which is this bottom section here, and then everything above this I will be highlighting, doing my normal highlighting technique and trying to get her as blonde as possible. So as I'm applying the darker color, I'm taking pretty thin slices and mostly just coloring the blonde where the ends are, because her root is already pretty much that level that we want. It's just like the ends. And this is also great because since she has shorter hair, if she doesn't like this color, it'll grow out pretty quickly since we normally cut her hair pretty short. But whenever a client wants to add in such a dark color and they're already so blonde, I always make sure that they are for sure about it, because it's very hard to go back to like such a light blonde once you've put such a dark level on your hair. Oftentimes, sometimes the client's hair can't take it if they're wanting to go blonder, and a lot of times they do have to grow it out if they decide to go darker from being so blonde. So now that I've finished applying the darker color on the underneath, I'm just going to let it process. You can just leave the liquid demi on since I'm not worried about it getting too dark or anything, since it's already a dark color. I'm just going to leave it on for the full highlight. I don't need to worry about rinsing it out. So I'm going in and it's starting to highlight my client, and on the bottom here I am doing more of a chunky highlight pattern, and then as I get towards the top it will transform into a more medium and smaller weave pattern. But I am doing these weaves back to back because I want her to feel as blonde as possible. And you can see I'm being very careful when I'm painting down into the previously lightened hair. I'm trying my best not to overlap and just picking out those pieces, and it makes a huge difference when you pull out all their foils and all their hair is still there, because when a client has previous blonde on the ends, especially when they're such a dark level to such a light level, you have to be very careful with overlapping, because you can put a lot of stress and their hair can become really damaged if you don't be very careful with where the lightener meets these light ends. And then it's easy for me to control the overlapping as well by not folding the foils here. So you can see that I'm laying a foil right on top of the pieces that I have already put lightener on, and typically I will do it this way, like I'll leave my foils like this if my client has a really long root. The only time that I will do a nice fold in my foils is if my client's root is not too long, because when you start to fold those foils, sometimes the hair moves and the product moves and can make some of the product bleed onto the previously lightened ends and cause some damage. So now as I'm getting closer towards the top, you can definitely see that my weaves have gotten a little bit smaller. This is just to blend the color a little bit. but I do kind of alternate doing like more of a very baby light type of weave to more of a medium sized weave, just depending on the section that I pull up from my highlights. And then normally if this was like a full head of highlight, I would have started with like a lower developer, but since we put some dark underneath there and this is more so of a partial highlight, a little bit more than a partial, but like somewhere mid in between a full and a partial, I decided to just use 20 volume throughout with my lightener. Also, can we just take a moment to appreciate my cheetah printed foils? These foils are by Framar, and I had saw them all over Instagram, people posting about them, and I was like, oh my god, I must have them. Because it's always fun using like a nicely printed foil. So I went on the Framar website and they were completely sold out. I was really bummed, but luckily my nearest Cosmoprof had some, so I bought a few boxes of these, and the one that I'm using is the one that is the foil roll, so you can like customize the length of the foil. Since I do a lot of balayages like this, it just makes it a lot easier for me. But this made foiling so much more fun, and my client felt super fancy. We both loved it, even though the foiling part takes the longest. It was just so satisfying to see my whole project pretty much done, and it was sad to pull out my foils and throw them away, but definitely super satisfying to use. Highly recommend getting the nicely printed foils just to brighten up your day. Alrighty, so we are moving to the side. So here I'm just basically repeating the same thing, doing more of a medium-sized weave. I don't do too chunky of a weave on the side front here, but more of a medium-sized weave, and making sure that I'm picking up a part of the hairline just so that the hairline is nice and bright. And I do like taking these sections horizontally up the head because I feel like it saves so much time than doing it vertically. But definitely just no space in between other than what is left out of my weave, just to get her as blonde as possible, because essentially we want this to look pretty solid but still blended when her roots grow in. So typically I'll do one side and then stop once I get to the temples of the head, and then move on, do the other side, and then again stop till I get to the other side temple of her head. And then that's when I'll start to do the money piece for the highlight. And for her money piece, I did 2 slices and then baby lighted until I reached the end of her bang, since she did have a bang, and then I go back and finish and highlighting the top part. And this is what my client's hair looked like once I was done foiling her. Doesn't it look super satisfying with all of the cheetah print foils? I definitely loved it so much, and will definitely be buying more if I can find some in store. But yeah, I lifted my client to about a level 9 and 10, and then I was able to rinse her. Before I rinsed out these foils though, I did take out the foils and then clip all the hair from the highlights up, and then I rinsed the underneath black part first, then clipped that, and then rinsed the highlights, just so that there wasn't any awkward or weird dark bleeding from the underneath color onto the new highlights. And then here I still kept the underneath black part clipped up, and I did a balayage basically, which I did a shadow root, and I shadow rooted her with the liquid demi. I used 7-0 with just like a splash of 6-0, and then applied some lightener on the mids and ends where her old color was, just to brighten it up because there was some warmth and some pinkish tone left over. And I let this sit for about like 10 minutes, and I decided to put the shadow root on before I put the lightener on her ends, just to save some time and have it both processed at the same time. And then once that was done processing, I did put on some toner, and I toned her with 9-1 and 9-2. I did apply the toner on the mid first, and then brush that out, and then started to apply the rest of the toner on the very ends. And here is my client's end result. You can see how nice and blonde she got, and you can definitely see that color blocking contrast on the underneath. We cut her hair and trimmed it. She always likes a short cut and a nice cute short bang, which I always love to do. And yeah, you can see how well that shadow root blends in with her natural, so that when her roots start to grow in, it doesn't bug her as much and it gives her more of a seamless grow out. And the maintenance on this is pretty much just to purple shampoo it whenever she feels like it's yellow. Sometimes overusing the purple shampoo when you're trying to maintain a blonde like this can actually darken the blonde, so it's good to do the purple shampoo only when you feel like it's yellow. And yeah, I expect her hair next time when she comes in to just be a little bit warmer, and then that 3-0 that we put on the underneath there will probably get a little bit lighter. Also, I just wanted to quickly mention that I am looking for a salon assistant at the moment. If you know anybody, or if you are interested in becoming my assistant, I work in Encino in Los Angeles. And yeah, you can definitely just email me your resume. But yeah, that is it for today, guys. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching this week's episode, and I will talk to you guys next week.